Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm fresh off a very exciting interview that I'm excited to bring to everybody today.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear it. We're about to set sail.
That's the cruise ships, they have giant sails now. That's the latest. I mean, it'd be very green technology, actually.
That would be very cool.
No, I mean, this is truly incredible because so my interview today is with Richard Fain, who was the CEO of Royal Caribbean for not 10, not 20, not 30, 33 years.
33 years. That's a lot of years, Kiernan.
That's a lot of years. You got to be pretty competent to stay at the head of an organization. And what's so cool about this interview, and that I just found eye-opening about his new book, which is why he's kind of out making the rounds, is it takes you through like the whole history of what like cruises were in like the 70s, which was this really niche business for like older retirees, and how it's grown into where it is today. And it brought me to this insight that I was thinking of just through my own experience of the past few years, which is, you remember my family did like all the cousins and things did like a Disney vacation that we decided not to go on because my kids were a bit too young, and the amount it was going to cost was just astronomical. And it made me think, have cruises actually become that like middle class aspirational dream vacation that Disney World used to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of my friends who are not like travelers, they go on cruises all the time, right? Like it's like every couple years they go on a big cruise somewhere.
Well, and the name of his book is Delivering the Wow. And I remember that's how I felt as a kid when I went to Disney World. You go to Disney World a couple times and it's like, wow, I just can't believe everything that's here. The color, the people, the music. And it's really, you come to realize that like that's how these ships have been designed to deliver this kind of like wow factor, attractions and entertainment and stuff that you don't get in your everyday life. That to me used to be the Disney World, and Disney World went out, there was that big New York Times expose about how Disney took this business strategy of like, we're going to focus on higher wealth individuals and families. And that has, to me, that's kind of become the opportunity for cruises. So super interesting. I mean, I just like it's not an industry I knew much about. Obviously, I went on my first one in June to Alaska with my two kids, which was a great way to travel with a family. And there's just lots of insights and some really nutty stories about how they transformed the industry from these tiny ships to these giant ships. So anyway, I'll let Richard Fain tell most of those, but it's really fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to hear. Maybe this will get me in the cruising mood, and I'll get on a cruise next year.
I mean, we have to, of course, do the Judy alert just to know exactly where you are. I assume you're not on the deck of a ship, but I did think it would be nice to enter the interview by sharing. I have no idea. Have you ever been on any cruise? So first, tell us where you are, and then tell me, have you ever been on any sort of overnight on a boat?
So I am in Bogota, Colombia, in my apartment.
I can tell you are nesting. I can tell this Delta experience has frightened you, and you're
I'm never leaving.
You're stationary.
Yeah, well, and I'm supposed to get on a flight in a few days to go visit my mom, and hopefully the government shutdown won't impact that. I know there's been some talk about all sorts of ways that travel could be disrupted for folks. So, so I am in Bogota, and the second part of the question was, have I ever been on a cruise? And the answer is yes. I went on a Norwegian cruise up to Canada from New York, and it was a Rosie O'Donnell cruise, and my boyfriend at the time, Kevin Curtis, was performing in Chicago.
What does that mean, a Rosie O'Donnell cruise?
Rosie O'Donnell did this cruise for a while. It was like a family cruise, but for gay families. So it was like,
oh, cool,
lesbians and their 5 kids, and so it was like that kind of it was a very family atmosphere. But I was with my boyfriend who was performing in Chicago, like the show on the boat, and it was interesting.
This was Kevin. I remember Kevin.
It was Kevin. Yeah, it was Kevin. Kevin, Broadway's Kevin Curtis, and Yeah, and so it was fun. I mean, we knew a lot of people because it was like, the group of performers were all like New Yorkers, so it was like we never really left New York at night when the cruise people would go to bed. There was like that late night bar that stays
Sure.
open where
Hmm.
where all the chorus boys, and so it was fun. It was a good time, and I read an incredible amount. I remember.
This begs the question: was Rosie O'Donnell on the cruise?
Yeah, Rosie O'Donnell was most definitely, she was the star of the show. It was her and,
God,
and her wife at
imagine
the
if that
time and the
were
kid.
today, you'd probably have Air Force bombs dropping on it.
It was a very sweet, lovely atmosphere. Everybody was very nice, a very happy place. It was only like 3 or 4 nights, so it wasn't like a ton of nights. But I would
Well,
love to go on like my one of my bucket list is the Queen Mary, the
mm.
fancy trip across the Atlantic.
Yeah, well, that's it also it did make me think about how Rick Steves is always trying to like help people who are a little scared of travel like get over that fear or embrace that fear to stretch themselves. And that is something too that like the comforts and predictability of a cruise ship to take you to like foreign places, it seems to me like another opportunity. We don't really get into that, but I've been having all these thoughts about the industry since reading the book. So anyway, it's a great interview, and I'd suggest we get to it.
Yeah, let's get to it. Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
My guest today is Richard Fain, who served as chairman and CEO of Royal Caribbean from 1988 to 2022, 33 years in total, and he continues to chair the board. He's also the author of a brand new book, Delivering the Wow, which is out on October 21st. It's part business book and part history of the industry. And for the travel podcast set, I thought the way that you walk through what cruising was to what it's become would be just extremely fascinating. And for me, it's particularly timely because I just got off my first Royal Caribbean cruise to Alaska in June. And listeners will know I hauled the whole family out there. And the kids' highlight was absolutely the ship, which was the Quantum of the Seas, which obviously you oversaw the construction of that ship. So congratulations and welcome to Out of Office.
Well, thank you. It's really good to be here, and thank you for having me. But you should be ashamed of yourself. You've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and your first cruise was just last summer. That's terrible.
I mean, I know. I trust me, I'm on board now because it really struck me. I don't think we ever could have loaded the kids up and taken, a 10-day journey any other way because you really need the level of organization and entertainment that the cruise ship provides.
So congratulations. You have now learned something that millions of Americans already knew, and it's just taken you a while to do it.
Well, from what I understand, when you were starting your career, it wasn't necessarily going to be in the cruise ship industry because that industry was actually pretty different starting then, which is, as you're saying now, it's become kind of standard for family travel. But back at the beginning, it was a very specialized sort of industry. So give us an overview of where you started, how that got you to Royal Caribbean, and then obviously you liked it because you stayed for a while.
Well, I was just incredibly lucky. I started out in finance without any idea whatsoever of being in the cruise business. And frankly, the cruise business didn't attract people like me at that point. It was a small niche business, relatively few operators, relatively small operations. But I was working for a larger company that was in the shipping industry and had a small investment in Royal Caribbean. And I was just fortunate enough. At one point, they were talking about expanding the company, building a new ship. And there was debate at the board whether this was a good idea or not. And much to my surprise, they asked me to get involved and to help evaluate that opportunity. And it was eye opening. When I did get involved, I saw just what an amazing industry this was and what a potential this was. And also what wonderful people were in the industry. So that's actually how I got into it. And sort of that led into eventually my becoming chairman CEO.
So at that start, when you just started to learn about the industry, who were the cruises really for?
Well, the cruises in those days were really tended to be a niche market. They tended to be older. We didn't even show children in our advertisements because we didn't want children. They were distracting.
That continues to be true.
Exactly. But the idea was that people didn't want to be with children, and so it was just mostly for older adults, and also the best market period was the winter time. January, February were our best months.
Mm.
Summertime was a difficult time, and so we really started to look at who is our market, what should it be, and we started to say, wait a minute, the potential here is amazing. And it's really not for the select few. It's not a niche market. It's really something that everybody would enjoy. And that's really where I started getting involved. And we established as our long term goal that we were really going to be an industry that would be appealing. We were going to be not a good cruise line, but a great travel and vacation supplier.
Mm.
And we wanted to be a part of the larger vacation market, not just the cruise market. That was the start of my introduction to the industry.
And in the book, you share a story about one of these early ships that, in pursuit of this business model of getting more people on, creating new attractions on the ships, you needed to basically double capacity of an older, smaller ship. And one of your executive partners there came up with a quite shocking idea that amazingly worked.
It shocks me even to this day. So that was Ed Steffen, who was the founder of Royal Caribbean, a visionary in his own right. He really created this whole concept of a purpose-built cruise ship. And he and the engineers figured out that if you take a 720 passenger ship and you cut it in half, which is a little scary as a thought.
Yeah.
You build a new midsection and you float out the bow, float back in the midsection, float the bow back in, and then glue it all together. You would have a ship of 1,040 passengers. So for the day, it was a huge ship. Yeah. And you could offer more to your guests. And especially got more economies of scale. And that was, as you say, that was really my first introduction to the business. I was asked to evaluate that. I did, and I still didn't understand how they did it, but I thought economically and financially it was brilliant. And it proved to be a game changer. It was wonderful. We went on to do it in the future a couple of other times. But that concept of making ships larger and more interesting was very compelling.
Yeah, give us a sense on those early ships. What were the diversions? What was the entertainment? Because nowadays there's an incredible amount of things to do, a great variety of things to do. I mean, a lot of the staff are entertainers, and so what was there anything like that? Were there shows? Were there bars? Were there amusement parks in the same way that there are today?
Yes, but on a much smaller scale. The concept was still, remember, this was an evolution. Ed actually took and made it more of a revolution, but really an evolution from simply transatlantic transportation devices that got you across the ocean. And so you had your main dining room. You had a lounge show. It wasn't really a theater, but it was a lounge show. You definitely had bars. You had places to sit and to socialize, but there wasn't a lot of other activities. And the average age of our guest was in the 60s. It was an older crowd who had the time and the money to do this luxury kind of vacation. And really, I think what we began to take off was when we said, if we really want to appeal to a larger audience, that means appealing to younger people. It means appealing to families. It means offering more activities. So not one dining room, but in today's ships, you can go to 27 different places to have dinner. Not not a lounge theater where there's maybe a singer, but a theater, a proper theater that would put Broadway to shame. And you can put on full shows, whether they're Broadway shows or dancing shows or other kinds of performers. But you have all the activities. So that was really the early stages of that. Was way back in the late 80s.
And give a sense of the size of ships today. I mean, what you're talking about, these smaller, older ships, which you were able to expand, and now the architectural and engineering challenges of these enormous ships. The one that I was on, Quantum, is it's quite large. I mean, when it pulls up to a city, you notice it. And so, what are the challenges, and how do you even begin to design ships of that scale?
Well, the ship that you were on, Quantum of the Seas, which is an extremely popular ship, is one of our medium-sized vessels. And part of our expansion has been at both ends. We really don't feel that one size fits all.
Yeah.
So our larger ship today, most recent ship, is about the size, a little bigger than 2 aircraft carriers combined.
And what's that one named?
It's the Icon of the Seas and the Star of the Seas.
Okay.
And it holds on a typical voyage 7,500 guests, a crew of 2,500, so you have 10,000 people on board. A little longer than the Empire State Building is tall. You know, they're massive, but
Yeah.
the reason for that is not just to make them bigger. It's because we can offer more.
Right.
So I think it's interesting that the sound and light equipment in the theater on board Icon of the Seas costs more than that first ship that you were referring to.
Wow. And I mean, also at that volume, you're also trying to keep costs reasonable for middle-class families, and the ability to actually bring 4 people in a family, 5 people in a family onto a ship, because that's certainly been a major story of the last year with travel, especially, the American dream used to be, we're going to Disney World for that like big family trip. And I know, like, my family and we turned down a family trip with several other family members last year, because when we looked at the final price tag, it made me choke. And I love Disney World. I really wanted to go, but we said, you know what? We can't. If we're going to do this, we can't do it when Penny's 3 years old. We got to wait till she's 7 and is really going to remember it, because we're probably only doing it the once. So how do you consider that that accessibility point with trying to attract families and regular folks?
Well, accessibility is a thing. And part of the beauty is that because it's a cruise and because we control all the experience, we're able to control the cost better.
Mm-hmm.
And so the experience isn't crazy. I think Jason Liberty, my successor, has coined the expression, which I really like, because I think it encapsulates a lot of what we're talking about. This isn't the vacation of a lifetime. This is a lifetime of vacations.
Mm-hmm.
And it does become affordable. We're able to offer, because we do it consistently, because we do it efficiently, we're able to offer amazing vacations that people come back not just raving about, but people are obnoxious about how wonderful it was. And it's still cheaper than any of your alternatives.
Right. And we've touched on some of the entertainment that happens on board. As I dug into your book, I came to understand even more things that I didn't get to see on my cruise. The story of coming up with how an ice rink would work on a ship was super fascinating. So can you tell us about that, and what's the status of ice skating on current Royal Caribbean ships?
Well, we just want to offer a tremendous variety. I come back to, and I think if people talk about, well, I'm not a train company, I'm a transportation company, but they don't really mean it. Yeah. We really had, from an early day, an expansive view of who we were and what we should be offering. And if you're offering a full vacation, it needs to offer everything. And it's not because it's on a ship. And so one of the things on a ship, well, a little bigger than the one you were on, was we wanted another lounge. We had the magnificent theater, but we wanted to go one step further and offer something special, something beyond that. And the idea was brought out to make an ice skating rink.
Hmm.
And an ice skating rink on a ship seems a little unusual, but if you're offering, well, you can do anything, got to include an ice skating rink. And so it's a technical challenge, but it's also a financial challenge. How do you pay for this?
Yeah.
And that's and actually that became kind of iconic in our culture, because the early idea was to make it using artificial ice.
Hmm.
Artificial ice would eliminate a lot of the technical issues, all the technical issues, and it's dramatically cheaper. But the trouble with artificial ice, you can skate on it, but it doesn't give you that beautiful, elegant, frictionless feeling that our professional skaters just look so good doing. So we said, no, we're going to, and this was an important lesson to us and to our people, we're either going to do it right, excuse me, or we're not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it proved to be very difficult, very expensive. But when you see these skaters, and today we are the largest employer of figure skaters in America. When you,
I've always wondered where they go after the Olympics, so it makes sense.
But they are so good and they are so beautiful to watch, and they put such energy into it. And the guests love it. So it's giving them one more experience. And this is just one of many experiences on the ship. Excuse me. It gives them one more experience that you don't find elsewhere. And it fits in with the whole concept of we're providing a vacation where you can do anything.
I imagine this is one of the joys of leading a company, because just the variety of challenges and places it takes. I mean, you weren't sitting there thinking about commercial cruising going, oh, you know what? I'm soon going to be learning about the science of different types of ice and speaking to athletes about the difference and how it feels on their skates. So was there any, I always love stories like this. Were there any attractions or big ideas that you all had from a ship that either because of cost or engineering, you just couldn't get on there?
Well, I have the best job in the world. There's absolutely no question about it. And nobody gets to play with toys like this. I'm essentially a big child.
Yeah. With very large toys.
But very large toys. Yeah, not many children get billion-dollar toys. But we looked at so many things, and part of what was so invigorating about working for Royal Caribbean is that our people would always push the envelope and come up with new ideas. And one of them, you asked about ones that didn't work. One of them, which was, I think, a terrific concept, seemed a little strange at the time, was what if we could put people up in a blimp behind the ship on a gondola hanging from a blimp?
Yeah.
Could we do that?
Sure.
And it has to be of a certain size. We wanted we came up with a design where you had this enormous blimp. Hanging below it would be a gondola that would hold 18 people, so you can get a sense of scale. And it would go up 300, 400, 500 feet off the ship. And we designed it in the computer. We ran simulations on the computer, ran simulations near the factory. Then we actually tried it out. We borrowed an old runway, and we tried towing it behind a truck to see if it could handle the speeds. And then finally, we took it on the sea trials of the ship that we were thinking maybe it would go on. That was Oasis of the Seas. And I went to those sea trials just to try it out, because I wanted to see, it sounded almost crazy. And I went up in it. A little scary because I'm afraid of heights.
And you're the test dummy at this point.
Dummy may be the right term. But I went up about 300 feet with our safety officer. And it was unbelievable. We were off the coast of Sweden. Beautiful coastline for miles as far as you could see. Looking down on the ship, it was just an incredible experience. So I thought maybe we have something here to go with all the other things we were adding. Unfortunately, because it was just a trial, nobody had created a proper anchoring system. And during the night, a storm came up and blew our blimp up and away.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And the next thing we know, the captain is getting a phone call from the Swedish Air Force.
Oh my God.
And the Air Force said, look, your blimp is floating towards our airlines,
Wow.
our lanes.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, we'd like to shoot it down. You know, what is a boy from Providence dealing with the
Right.
Swedish Air Force?
Yeah, shooting down your blimp, your private blimp.
Fortunately, it sank on its own. But we decided that the ship had so many other features that one we could probably skip.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that story does give me a sense of the reason you picked this title, Delivering the Wow. And I think you've told the story well about you're always Royal Caribbean really focuses on what's the next thing that we can create that's going to make people stop and say wow, or write letters afterwards and say wow. And I'll say in my experience, I experienced that at hospitality level, house cleaning crew, restaurant crew, everybody extremely polite, very detail oriented. There's a lot of small pieces like they would tie the towels that were left into your room into creative animals that were made with these stickers and things, very complicated kind of towel origami that my kids just went nuts for. They're still talking about, particularly the monkey hanging from a hanger. Very, very good.
I tried to learn how to do it and I couldn't. but
and so how did you create this idea of the wow? Where did that come from? And how does a company keep that up without it becoming something that, for a crew that's on a ship many times over that clears out thousands of passengers and then loads thousands of new refreshed passengers right back up? How do you keep that level of intensity around hospitality and focus?
Well, you've put your finger on the part that thrilled me every day I came to work. It's the people, and they are so passionate about this. And they created a culture that wouldn't accept anything less than excellence. And we're constantly striving to get better. There is a certain insatiability to that, which can be difficult, but I'm always in awe of the crew. They are smiling. I mean, these people work very hard. It's long hours. It's weeks at home or months away from home and away from your loved ones. And they are smiling as though they're the ones on vacation. But delivering the wow is not something we said, this is what we want to do. It actually came because that is what we did do.
Yeah.
Wow is sort of the expression that comes out of your mouth all the time. And it's the crew member, it's the cabin steward, it's the waiter, it's the bartender, it's the dancer, it's the singer, it's the croupier, it's whoever. But it's also the people in the office who design the menu. It's also the people that figure out how do you feed 700,000 meals a day and across the fleet,
right,
and make sure every meal is excellent. And the passion, the determination, the commitment to continuous improvement, that is the culture. And that's actually why I wrote the book, because everybody says the culture at Royal Caribbean is so special, it's so unique. I felt that it deserved an airing.
Can you give a sense when you're designing a ship, what's a place where you as the executive saw, okay, this is going to be a substantial cost. There's a way cheaper way to do this. But you actually decided, no, we have to prioritize that sense of wow, that sense of wonder, something that nobody else is going to be able to have. And you greenlit a more difficult or less practical version of a project.
I would say every day, because it's a constant battle. What was so good was that a little bit breeds success, and people saw that the company wanted and the people wanted better and better. And so everybody felt that their job was to innovate. Their job was to come up with new things. And one example, I don't think you've been on it, but one of our more recent ships, the Icon of the Seas, we wanted to offer diving, an aqua theater.
Wow.
So, what you can do is extraordinary, beautiful things.
Yeah.
But we needed to create a dome that was just an incredibly large engineering challenge. And, but we again said, we're either going to do it right or we shouldn't do it. And so we created this enormous dome that goes over and allows us to have diving shows. You can have some people dive from a 1 meter board, which is quite normal and beautiful diving. But again, these are great athletes and artists, really. But they also go from the 3 meter board, and then we have a 10 meter board, which is what you see in the Olympics. And then we actually decided we had to go one further step and have a 17 meter diving platform. So from 17 meters up, these people dive and do amazing gymnastics. They put on incredible shows, swimming, synchronized swimming. The artistry is spectacular. But the physical challenge was big. And we knew that this was part of designing something that would blow people's minds.
Yeah.
That people would walk into this room and say, wow. And it does. And people love it. And the imagination from our team that put all this together, and imagination and thinking it up, and then the imagination and innovativeness in making it reality was the kind of thing I'm in awe of and tried to convey a little bit in the book.
And is the dome just because of the height that those have to jump from? You need like protection above them? Is that the reason the dome had to be so huge?
Yes. And like everything else, we learn from doing things, and we also don't rest on our laurels. So we had created an aqua theater before that was out of doors. But what we found was out of doors isn't as comfortable for the guests, and it's not as good for the performers, especially if it's a windy day. And in fact, if it's too windy, you can't dive because it's not safe, and we're not going to take risks on that. But if you put it in a dome, you can accommodate more people. You can do it regardless of the weather. It's more comfortable both for the guests and for the performers. And the other thing is, it's just a spectacular room. I know it's sounding like a cliche at this point, but you literally walk into this room and everybody says, wow, look at this.
So we've talked about some of the best parts of the job. Something that you definitely feel when you're on the cruise is, we're really out there. You're out to sea, you're away from land. Everything that you need has to be packed on this ship. The logistics need to be handled on the ship. There's unpredictable weather. There's unpredictable political circumstances. I'm curious, over decades of experience on this, what are 1 or 2 incidents that were the most stressful days on the job?
Oh, really? Thank you thank you.
Hey, you wrote about them. So I felt that the door was open.
Fair enough. And in fact, I felt fairness dictated having a chapter called "What the Hell."
Yeah.
And bad things happen. And first of all, that happens in any job. But I think in the cruise industry, we felt a particular responsibility to our guests and to our crew, to their safety, to their well-being. And we had a number of instances that threatened all that. We worry about that. I would say if I had to name a few of those, one was probably during the pandemic, when in the pandemic, there were rules written that basically did not allow our crew members to go home.
Wow.
There was such unthinking fear at the beginning of the pandemic that um, people were writing, and everybody felt they ought to write a rule.
Hmm.
And they were often writing rules. I know we had one instance where we were bringing people from a pier into an airport, and the authorities required the bus that was carrying them to drive around the city because they didn't want a bus. And by the way, there was no one sick on board, but they didn't want a bus load of people coming through the city in case somebody on board had COVID.
Hmm.
But probably the worst part for me was when the authorities said our crew members, and at that time we had 40,000 crew members left on our ships. A lot had gone home.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't leave. Couldn't
Wow.
fly home.
Yeah.
And these are people who are no COVID on board. No, they haven't seen land in weeks. But these are people who hadn't seen their families for months, and they were kept on board for months, not allowed to go home. It was agonizing.
Wow.
And the worst part is I felt so helpless.
Yeah. Right.
So I guess that was probably one of a number of really bad times. Fortunately, I think our culture in most of these cases allowed us to rise up. So 9/11, everybody was terrified that people wouldn't sail again or people wouldn't fly.
Hmm.
But everybody said, okay, now how do we deal with this? And so one of the things that was important about our culture was we're not going to wring our hands. We are going to find a solution to these problems.
Hmm.
And that was one of the things that I found so energizing at working at Royal Caribbean was we had a goal. We were constantly focused on the long term. And so we learned not to panic over where we were. I do think fear sometimes makes people stupid because they just overreact.
Mm-hmm.
But by keeping our focus on where we wanted to be on the other side of whatever crisis we were feeling with, it number one, it lessened the pain,
Mm-hmm.
but it also made us more productive. We were actually doing something to get to a longer term future, and that proved to be very successful for us.
And do you essentially have a situation room where if something happens that is a crisis, there's a crisis team that meets at that place and you're getting pizzas and coffee delivered for the next week?
Yes, we call it an incident response room. We try not to use the term crisis, but we actually have a series of rooms because whenever there is an incident, it normally affects other people. So we have an incident response room that has a series of video wall that we can be looking at various factors of things. It has a communications room attached to it, so it can always put us, communications is one of the key issues. But then we have a series of, in effect, annexes, separate rooms. So if it's a marine problem, the marine department can be working on some of the technical details and feeding that to us. Or if we need to communicate with our guests, we have a link that goes to our guest services room, et cetera. So it actually builds up. But we've learned to be pretty proactive in these things, and we've learned also to communicate well, and we rehearse them. We do practice drills as well.
That's I found really fascinating in the book. The level of decisions that have to be made. There's one example of a ship that had hit a reef, and the captain had it shove into a sandbar in order to beach it, in order to keep everybody safe, which was ultimately the right decision because safety is the top priority in any situation. But then the description of, okay, so you get everybody off board, and then you realize, oh, most of these people locked their passports in their safes in their rooms, and so now we have to go into their safes, let alone get them their luggage and everything matched up to thousands of passengers who are waiting. But there's also valuable, unpredictable things in these safes. So, we're going to videotape ourselves opening them so that we have evidence of being able to deliver the exact right things. I mean, just the logistics, you feel it on board. You feel like everything's running like clockwork, which is why I was so interested in the incident part of the job, because it's inevitable when there's this many people, when it's weather, when it's international. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong.
Well, there is a lot to go wrong, and the key is you need to prepare yourself.
Yeah.
And if we use the example that you've just given, where we did have this incident, where when I first heard it, one of the first things they said to me was, the captain has just taken the decision to drive the ship up onto the sandbar. And what the hell?
Yeah.
But what it showed is that there was alignment on our priorities,
Right.
and our priority was safety. So driving the ship up on the sandbar might damage the hull and cost us some money, but it made absolutely sure that everybody was safe. Because once you're aground, you're perfectly in good shape.
Right.
And it was exactly the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it, and he did it without consulting us. He just said that's the right thing to do. And so our problem became, how do we make our guests comfortable rather than how do we make our guests safe?
Right.
And the culture that brought that together, that got everybody focused on, okay, we've now got them safe. We got them off the ship. They're on shore. Now we have to deal with what to do with them, and how to make them comfortable, how to get their home, how to, as you say, get their passports, their luggage, etc. And so it was that alignment that everybody understood, because in the business, there's so many thousands and thousands of decisions. I, of course, believe that the CEO should get credit for every good decision
Of
that the
course.
company makes. I mean, what else am I here for?
But
But everybody's making decisions, and
Yeah.
so you have to have a culture that makes sure that when they're making those decisions, they're doing it with the same goal in mind. So we can't have one person who says, "Well, my job is just to cut costs," and the other person says, "Well, my job is just to serve food." No, we're there to provide excellence, and we all and to drive us to a new and broader and better cruise experience. And it continues to grow, and we're going to be better next year than this year. So it's important to have that alignment.
So I have one more question. I'm going to bring us away from that side of the business and back to ice rinks and music shows and Mai Tais by the pool.
Thank you.
Which is, you reveal in the book, you didn't originally see yourself as a cruiser, right? You hadn't taken that vacation before, and as you got further into the industry, you thought, boy, I better start going on some of these cruises. And obviously, you're a convert today. And so for the listeners who have never taken a cruise before, who have just, they have some idea that the cruise is not for them, what's your pitch? What's a misconception people have, and why should they give it a shot?
Well, the misconception, of course, is that cruising is either expensive, or it's for older people, or it's for different kinds of people. My experience was I had studied it, and in my head, I understood, because I had been asked to do this study, and I had realized this experience appeals to all kinds of people. It's a wonderful vacation that appeals to everybody. That's what my head said. But my heart said, well, of course, it's not sophisticated enough for me. I'm a different kind of person.
Sure.
And Ed Steffen, who had founded the company, said to me, Richard, you're making all these comments, but you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Wow.
You've never even taken a cruise.
Wow.
And so that was a challenge I couldn't ignore.
Yes.
My credibility was at stake. So my wife and I took a cruise purely to shut him up.
Sure, of course.
And eliminate his ability to make that argument. And we took because I thought I knew it. I thought I knew it all. And we took the cruise, and wow. It boggled my mind, because it was for people like us.
Right.
We did enjoy sitting down to dinner. We did it with new people. We did enjoy seeing the shows. We did enjoy walking around. It just was such a, and by the way, this was a very early days of cruising, and without all the activities today.
Mm-hmm.
And it really made us appreciate that cruising was a much broader appeal. And I had known that intellectually. Now I knew it emotionally.
Yeah. I'll say, for my part, I had a similar conception before I went to Alaska this past summer, and I had been to Alaska once before and did it by air and train. And this time, probably one of the best memories I'll take away from it was an evening where it was dusk. My kids were just to bed, and I went out on the balcony as we were just cruising along the side of Alaska. And it was just mountain after mountain after mountain after mountain in this beautiful light, perfectly peaceful. There was a whale. I mean, you really couldn't like script a more beautiful moment. And I'll never forget it. And the only way you could experience something like that would be on a ship. And so it just opened up my mind to all the places that you can only go through an experience like cruising.
Well, I think what you've pointed out is one of the mystiques of the sea.
Mm.
It really is just a romantic and emotional experience. But the other aspect, which you and I have talked about before, is the crew members. Normally when you go on a vacation, you maybe go to a restaurant, you take a taxi cab, and who you see is not part of a culture. There, maybe if you're lucky, they're still doing hard work for you, but it's hit and miss, and it's different kinds of people and different kinds of environment. On our cruise ship, everybody there works for us. They all are imbued with this passion for delivering the wow,
Mm-hmm.
and and you become and you really, these people. I'm shocked at how passionate they are about delivering this extraordinary experience. And so you see it, and that's true whether the person is your waiter, or your cabin steward, the dancer, the singer, the croupier, the refrigeration expert dealing with the air conditioning, the cleaner who's polishing the brass or vacuuming the carpet. There's just a passion for delivering that excellence, that wow, that you can't find in an environment that's made up of different people from different areas.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's terrific. The book, again, is called Delivering the Wow. It certainly gives a lot of insight into how you built that culture, and it's what a legacy. So congratulations on the book at first. And Richard Fain, many thanks for coming on Out of Office.
No, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And now it's time for the last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
So Kiernan, I just can't stop thinking about just cutting this boat in half and then adding a middle.
I know, that's a job I want. Just the enormous buzz saw.
Yeah, that's how I thought it would happen when I was like 6. So it's funny that
yeah. No, I mean, I also, but you know, you run a business. I run a business. It doesn't it amaze you that like for a business to take the risk that that's gonna work? It's just enormous, and it did.
Yeah. Well,
and in fact, I'll put up a couple photos on the Instagram of that process because they're in the book and they are fat. I mean, you know, it's an enormous ship cut in half. I mean, you really can't fake it.
Yeah, that is something I never considered. That was a real way that those long ships were made. So really, that's super cool. You know, I've only ever been to like one shipbuilding yard, and that was weirdly in Belfast, which is connected to my last stop. So
interesting.
It all comes together.
All right. So that just intros me perfectly because we're here in the last stop. This is the final segment of the show, my favorite segment, your favorite segment, and it's popularly known as the people segment. And that's because it's a place for the people. It's a communal space where we come together and we share. Particularly you and I share, and we each share one thing each episode. It's formulaic, but it's predictable, and that gives people comfort. And the important thing about what we share is that it has to meet one criterion. It must inspire the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask you, as I ask you every episode, do you have a last stop this week?
I do have a last stop. So I was looking for some fun, like Irish genre fiction to read while I was in Ireland. And so I picked up this author, Adrian McKinty. very good Irish name. And just finished the first book of his series that's set during the Troubles in
And
Belfast.
were you reading this over a few cocktails on your flight to Atlanta?
I definitely started it on my flight to Atlanta. Yeah. But I got too drunk to focus. That's not true, Mom. Anyway, so he wrote this series called it's the Sean Duffy series, and it's about this kind of grizzled Catholic cop in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. And I'm not like a big crime fiction guy. I don't read a lot of it actually. And but what I liked about this was just how immersive it was in the time and in the place. And I felt like I was sort of like, wow, this is it was really bad to be in Belfast in the 1980s. It wasn't a great town. And it was really immersive. And I'm not inspired to read the rest of the series at this point. But if I do go back to Belfast, which I've been to Belfast, and that's why I went. The Titanic was built there,
Of course,
and you can go to the museum there. And so I thought it was really immersive and interesting. And I would recommend I'd recommend him to folks who are interested in crime fiction, but interested in sort of like that Irish historical take, because it's very immersive in the Troubles, and certainly being a Catholic police officer in a Protestant police force, I identified with that. So yeah, I thought that was really fun. And then another thing I've been enjoying. Have you seen Black Rabbit on Netflix yet?
No. But it sounds like are you tripping into a second last stop here? This is
a second. Yeah.
I suppose we could wrap it in, fictional stories that are inspiring. Yeah.
Well,
travel.
This is totally different. This is making me miss New York. This is
this is Jason Bateman's thing, right?
It's Jason Bateman and Jude Law, and Jude Law plays like a restaurateur and a restaurateur in New York, and opened this cool restaurant, Black Rabbit, and gets involved in all sorts of stuff he shouldn't be involved in. But boy, has it made me like want to open a restaurant in New York, despite all the
I'm in the restaurant business. Don't do it.
I know, but it looks so sexy. It looks so fun.
And it does. It does.
They've done an amazing job of building this space called the Black Rabbit. They found like a real restaurant space to base it on, and then they built like the sets to actually film inside. But it's just such a vibey New York place. I felt instantly at home in the Black Rabbit, and I'm only halfway through the series, so maybe it ends terribly, but it's a blast and it's really fun. Jason Bateman is just, you can't not have a good time watching that guy.
Both of them. I like them both. It wasn't super on my radar, but with your recommendation, I think I will tee it up.
Yeah, it's a classy series that mixes a bunch of, it's like mixes like Russian crime, syndicate with the restaurant in New York, and it's got a lot of plotty elements, but it's really fun and great cast, and I definitely recommend. So if you're looking for some fiction, you've got Adrian McKinty in his series on the Troubles, and Black Rabbit, the Netflix TV series on with Jason Bateman and Jude Law. Did you bring us a last stop this week?
I did. There was a New York Times travel article that I really liked and kind of brought me back. A couple weeks ago when we did Theodore Roosevelt sites, we talked about Mount Rushmore. And this was about the Crazy Horse Memorial, which is 17 miles from Mount Rushmore. And I don't know that we've ever touched on what this memorial is, but this is basically an enormous mountain that is being carved to represent the Lakota chief Crazy Horse, who's famous for defeating Custer. And it has been in process being built since 1939. Okay, so it's been sort of shepherded by this family. There was a Lakota elder who approached a Boston-born sculptor whose name I am sure I'm going to get wrong, but it's Korzak Zielkowski, and
a Native American.
Good one. No, but he was very drawn to the Native American cause, and he moved from the East Coast to South Dakota in response to Mount Rushmore, where the Lakota were basically looking for a memorial that could again assert like their heritage in the Black Hills of South Dakota in this beautiful landscape. And it has been in process for so long because it is going to be absolutely enormous. I mean, assuming it ever finishes, and that's the article shows you some things. You can see kind of the head and an arm that's outstretched that's pointing to a Native American reservation of the Lakota people. When it gets completed, it will be the world's largest sculpture, 563 feet high, 642 feet long. It will be bigger than the Sphinx. Okay. So like that just gives you a sense of the scale. And when you see it next to Mount Rushmore, you kind of go, oh, Mount Rushmore, that's like, what's that, an afternoon to sculpt that? I mean, you look at this Lakota warrior and it is unbelievably huge. It's hard to conceive from the ground. And one thing that the article goes into that I didn't know was they open it a couple times a year for people to hike to the summit, which is usually closed because they're actively still working on the sculpture. So if you find yourself going to South Dakota, to Rapid City, to Rushmore, definitely take the time to go to the Crazy Horse Memorial, where you'll see it actively coming along. And I think this is something that maybe we could see completed in our lifetime.
Yeah, maybe this will be a trip you and I take together for this 1000th episode of the podcast.
I think we're focused on North Dakota. I want to keep North Dakota.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is in the future. I'm looking at the
sure.
Yeah,
retired.
I'm looking at the image of what it is going to be and what it is now. They have quite a bit of work to do.
There's a lot of work. There's a lot of work to do, and you can donate to it. And they do have like a very extensive gift shop and kind of gallery that you get to explore at the foot of it.
Yeah, gotcha. This New York Times article, I'm not used to all these moving images, so it's very
yeah.
very
sometimes
exciting.
It does feel like they're going a little heavy on the multimedia.
I'm like, whoa.
This is definitely one of those stories.
Yeah. A lot of drones. They got a drone over the Times that they're using. So that's nice to see. No, that's quite. I think I've read about this before, and most definitely, this is a good counterbalance to Mount Rushmore.
I find that every few years somebody publishes about this, because it is an interesting story, especially because it's like the joke you made, like the family that has been guiding the sculpting isn't actually Native American, which is such an odd thing, because you would kind of think that maybe the community would be doing it themselves. But it's fascinating, and it's been going on for a really long time.
Well, good luck. That's a lot of work out there. Well, Kiernan, this has been a very shippy episode of Out of Office. Until next time, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
The seat taken.
Could you make a train big that way? Like cut it in the middle and just make it even bigger?
Well, I think that's just you unhook the
cars.
And you just add a bunch of cars.
It's
so
made for that.
A lot easier.